Hello everybody, welcome to the third video in my classes series here on chemistry. Today we are going to be talking about physical and chemical properties and changes. So far we've talked about different classifications of matter, right? Elements, compounds, and mixtures. And we've also talked about the different states of matter, solid, liquid, and gas. So today we're going to sort of not wrap things up, but we're gonna talk about some of the other physical and chemical properties that substances can have, and we're gonna talk a little bit about some physical and chemical changes that those substances can undergo. Okay, the real purpose of today, or the real objective for today, is for you to be able to distinguish or tell the difference between physical and chemical properties and physical and chemical changes. Okay, so we're really trying to tell what is the difference between a physical property and a chemical property, or if we're talking about a change, what's the difference between a physical change and a chemical change. All right. Now, this is certainly not mandatory, but if you would like to take some notes at home or take some notes online, like in a Google Doc or something like that, I have a link here in the slides for today, which you can find on Canvas, that has a graphic organizer in it. So let me go ahead and open that up. So it's just a table, okay? And this will help you if you are going to write some things down. If you can make a table that looks kind of like this, this is going to help you organize all of the things that are in the notes today, okay? But like I said, this is not a mandatory thing. It's just really if you want to. Having access to the slides themselves is probably good enough. Okay, so in general, this is the difference between a physical type of thing and a chemical type of thing. Okay, whether it be a physical property or a physical change, chemical property, chemical change, this right here is the main difference. When we're talking about something of a physical nature, the identity of the substance doesn't change. But when we're talking about something that is chemical in nature, the identity of the substance does change, okay? And you're going to see this difference illustrated in some of the slides coming forward here. But this is the fundamental difference between a physical type of thing and a chemical type of thing, whether or not the identity of the substance is or is not changing, okay? So let's talk about properties in general. Okay, so not necessarily physical or chemical properties, just properties overall. What is a property? A property of something is a trait, a characteristic, or a description. Okay, think about adjectives. Okay, they describe something, right? So here are a couple of examples. Lead is a soft metal. Okay, so the metal is soft. Lead is soft. This right here is an image of a lead pipe. It's actually super old. This is like 2,000 years old or more. This is from like the ancient Roman Empire. The ancient Romans used to use lead for their pipes, or for some of their piping, because it is so soft. You can put it in the ground, and even if the earth shifts around a little bit, the lead is soft enough to be able to adapt to the new shape of whatever it needs to be. Okay. Another example: fluorine is very reactive. Okay, this is a person of somebody's hand who has been burned by hydrofluoric acid, which contains fluorine. Okay, so both of these statements are true, and the underlined word here is the property. Okay, so lead is soft, fluorine is reactive. Okay. So let's talk about physical properties specifically. Okay, remember, the point of today is to learn the difference between a physical thing and a chemical thing. So physical properties, these are the inherent properties of substances. What that means is that these properties, these things, may be observable with your five senses. Okay, so for example, something's color, its texture, its hardness, its weight, its density. It may also be like, just like we saw on the previous slide, lead is a soft metal. that's kind of like its texture. Not exactly, but it is something that you could observe with your five senses, right? And then there's one other big type of physical property, and that is right here, this bullet point here at the bottom. Melting or boiling points, okay? For example, water melts or freezes, okay? Those are kind of the opposite of each other, right? But they happen at the same temperature. Water melts or freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, and it boils or condensates at 212 degrees Celsius, okay? Let me say that again. It melts, degrees Fahrenheit, yeah, sorry. Water melts or freezes at 0 degrees Celsius, 100 degrees Celsius, and then it melts at 32 degrees Fahrenheit and boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Sorry, got that a little mixed up in my head there. Okay, so this is important though, okay? A lot of people tend to think that melting and boiling, freezing, that sort of thing is a chemical thing because the substance is kind of changing, right? But the key thing here is that when water melts or when it boils, it's still water, right? It's not actually changing into a new substance, right? The identity of the water is not changing. It's just changing its state, right? So that means that because the identity of the water is not changing, this is just a physical thing or a physical property, okay? Chemical properties, these properties or these descriptions of substances talk about how a substance interacts with other substances or how that substance can change into another substance. Really what you're looking for here are some keywords, okay? Like reactivity, flammability, or toxicity. Okay, you may not be able to notice these things with your five senses just by looking at it, right? You can only really discover chemical properties of substances by playing around with them, right, and experimenting to see how they interact with other things or how they can change. Okay, so now let's talk about changes. Okay, so we spent a bit of time talking about properties. Let's talk about changes now. So changes are different than properties. Changes are more like actions or scenarios. So instead of thinking about adjectives, let's think about verbs. Okay, so more active things. So some examples here. The lake froze overnight, right? So this happened. Your car burns gasoline, right? So this is a Camaro engine. This can burn gasoline to turn the chemical energy of the gasoline into mechanical energy to spin your tires around. So these are both actions or scenarios, okay? These would both be changes. Now, physical changes, right? If we think about physical things do not involve the identity of the substance changing. So these are going to be sort of simple changes, right? Crushing something up, bending it, breaking it in half. So think about like breaking a pencil in half or crushing a graham cracker up into, pie crust, or bending a lead pipe, right? All of these things are not changing the identity of the substance, right? It's just changing its shape or its form. So it's just physical in nature. And like I mentioned before on a few slides ago, any of the changes in state, melting, freezing, boiling, or condensation, any of these things would be physical changes, okay? So the action, melting, freezing, boiling, condensation, this is a physical change. The melting or boiling point, right? So the fact that water boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit, that statement there, that temperature is the physical property, but the actual act of water boiling would be a physical change, okay? All right, and then lastly, chemical changes. These are also known as chemical reactions, okay? And in order for a chemical change or a chemical reaction to have taken place, you have to have created a new substance. Okay, so a new substance is formed in chemical changes and chemical reactions. There are some pieces of evidence that you can use to notice when a chemical change has taken place, okay? If a change in color takes place, that usually means that a chemical reaction or a chemical change has happened, right? Same thing with smell or taste, right? If something happens and you notice that there's a new smell, that means that a chemical reaction has taken place. Same thing with taste, okay? If light or heat is being emitted, then that is a really good indication that a chemical change or a chemical reaction has taken place. And then the formation of solid precipitates or gas bubbles. Okay, so what does this mean? This is really talking about when you mix together two different liquids. If you mix together two liquids and something solid forms, okay, that is a good indication of a chemical reaction. Or if you mix together two liquids and you start seeing gas bubbles, okay, think of like baking soda and vinegar, right? You mix those together and it kind of starts bubbling up. That is a good indication that a chemical change has taken place, okay? There are some videos here on the next few slides. I'm not going to force you to watch all of these. These are just some examples of chemical changes, okay? Leaves changing colors, lightning bugs glowing in the dark, and then these are some experiments that you might do in a lab that have, like it's the solid precipitate and the gas bubble scenario. Okay, so like I said, I'm not going to force you to watch those right now in class, but if you want to pull up the slides in Canvas, you are more than welcome to. Okay, let's go to the Canvas course, and I'm going to show you what the assignment is for today. Okay, so at the bottom you can find the link to the notes and the video, and then here is a Canvas quiz. Okay, and this is going to be your all's assignment for today. Once again, it's just like a formative assessment. Okay, so don't think of it as like a quiz. You're going to have multiple attempts on it. There's 20 questions. And in each question, I ask you, or I give you a statement, okay? Your job is to read the statement and to figure out which of these four things that statement is. Is it a physical property, chemical property, physical change, or chemical change, okay? So you have to figure out, is it a property or a change, and then also is it chemical or physical or chemical. Okay, so it's one of those four options every time, and you need to figure out which of those four it is. All right, so let me go ahead and do two of these with you guys right off the bat here. Okay, so the first one, copper sulfate, copper 2 sulfate, and here's the formula for that, is blue in color. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to think about is, does that sound like a property or a change? And to me, that sounds like a property, right? Nothing's changing here. There's no action. It's just telling me that this thing is blue, right? So I don't think it's a physical change or a chemical change. Definitely sounds like a property. And so then the question then becomes, is it a physical property or a chemical property? Okay. And if you think back to what we just heard in the notes there, physical properties are things that you can observe with your five senses. I can see colors, right? So I think that this is probably a physical property, okay? And that is correct. All right, question number 2. Many alcohols are highly flammable. Flammable means that they catch on fire easily. Okay. So once again, is this a change or a property? Well, it doesn't say that it's actually burning. It just says that many alcohols can catch on fire easily. So once again, this kind of sounds like a description. So I think this is probably a property. So is it a physical property or a chemical property? Well, physical properties are things that I could observe with my five senses. Now, that's a little tricky, right? Because I could see alcohol on fire, right? But if I only see the alcohol, right, and I don't have a flame or anything, could I tell just by looking at it that it would be easily ignited or easily catch on fire? Probably not, right? And once again, let's think back to what some of the slides talked about before. Chemical properties, right? These are some key words that I want you guys to look for, right? If you see any of these three words here, like flammability, that means chemical property, okay? So it says many alcohols are highly flammable. That's a chemical property. All right, and then let's do one more just for good measure. Tungsten, which is a element on the periodic table. It's got the symbol W. Tungsten melts at 6,192 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so that's really hot. Okay, tungsten is a metal. This is actually the metal that is used in light bulb filaments. So the little tiny part in the light bulb that actually glows. That's one of the reasons why they use tungsten, by the way. It can get really, really hot without melting, right? I mean, you have to get tungsten really hot before it melts, right? Think about that, 6,000 degrees until it melts. Okay, so anyways, now this one's really tricky, okay? Because this one sounds like both a property and a change, right? It tells us the melting point, the number, but then it also says that it's melting, right? It says tungsten melts. So this is why you guys have multiple attempts on the quiz, okay? If you get one like this wrong, just pick the next best option, and you're probably going to be right, okay? Now, this is definitely a physical thing, okay? If I go back to the notes, physical properties have melting and boiling points, okay? So melting and boiling points are physical things. Same thing here in the changes. Melting, freezing, boiling, condensation, those are physical things, all right? So here on this quiz, the fact that we're talking about something melting, it's definitely physical, okay? We just have to choose, is it a change or a property? It does give us the specific melting point, so I'm going to pick physical property. If that happens to be wrong, it's definitely physical change, okay? So when you do your second attempt, if you get some of these wrong, you would switch that over to the other physical option there, okay? Because the wording there is a little bit complicated. All right, that is it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm going to stick around here for 15-20 minutes to let you guys get started and ask me any questions that you guys might have. Thanks for watching.